My name is Justina Ojla, and I'm so grateful to be here with you all today. I'm a second-generation settler of Punjabi ancestry, born and raised on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. While I'm blessed to have grown up in such a quiet and calm community, it would be disingenuous to identify as home without acknowledging the history and the people who this land truly belongs to. I'm aware of the opportunity I have to be an active and curious learner and bring my learnings to family members and members of this community who do not know the history of these lands. Kitsilano takes its name after a Squamish First Nations chief whose people were displaced by local government in 1901. At the time, the area was a dense forest, but an attractive one to occupy due to its flat land, proximity to train and water, and the prospective popularity of Vancouver as a city. The story of the Squamish chief and the role of the government is unfortunately a common one. When reflecting on my life, I realize that I am connected to the Musqueam peoples in many ways, and I understand that I have been the beneficiary of lands that never belonged to me. I have benefited from the crisp air of the UBC forest, brisk walks of the trails that extend through them, and the cool water from the seas that bank our beaches. Until recently, I have not given my full appreciation for the land I inhabit and the people whose sacrifice has been my bounty. I must respect, consider, and reflect on the history that exists here. In sharing my beginnings, I invite you all to consider your roots and acknowledge the land you occupy today.
So hi everyone, thank you for joining us. My name is Sabrina Anchknep and I am the Education Programs Assistant at the Gord Downie and Cheney Wenjack Fund. Inspired by Cheney's story and Gord's call to build a better Canada, we aim to build cultural understanding and create a path towards reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. It's so great to be here during Truth and Reconciliation Week for DWF Live with Dallas Soonias. So based in Calgary, Alberta, and a proud member of the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation, Dallas was the first Indigenous male to represent Canada internationally in volleyball from 2014 to 2016. He has received several awards, including the Tom Longboat Award and the 2021 Inspire Award for Sports. Today, we'll be talking about highlights from the Olympics and how sport can play an important role in moving reconciliation forward. So Dallas, welcome, and miigwech for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Miigwech. By the way, I want to give a quick shout out to Red Pheasant First Nation, where my dad's side of the family is from, because I was actually registered there first when I was born, but now I'm registered on my mom's side with the Chippewas of Nawash. Shout out Nawash Ingagaming. Word up. Sorry.
All good. So before we jump into the Olympics, we want to learn a little bit more about you. So how did you first get involved with volleyball and what led you to pursuing it professionally?
Well, I think I was super lucky to grow up in a city, in the sense of there was, I say a city, it was Red Deer. I don't know how much of a city it was, but there was more, I'd say there was more opportunity for sport than say on the res, at Nawash Ingagaming. Most likely there was more opportunity. So my brother and I had just a whole bunch of energy, and my parents figured out, probably for their own sanity, let's get these kids into things to burn some of this. So I played everything, every program there was, every sport. I think I was in jazzercise for a hot minute when I was really young. So I did everything. And but eventually my brother and I, we basically settled on basketball. I say that, but we were playing basketball while still doing other peripheral sports. And at a certain point in high school, I felt my brother was so well known in our town as a really good basketball player. I wanted to try my own thing. So I tried this volleyball thing because all my friends in high school were doing it. And it came before basketball season. So I'm like, all right, I'll try this thing to, stay in shape for basketball. And I was terrible. I was, oh my gosh, like the first 2 times I tried to hit a ball, I completely missed the ball. It was embarrassing, but I got better fairly quickly from that point. And I realized I loved the game more than basketball. And reason being, volleyball, I mean, now that I'm an old dude, I can look back and try to figure out why I like the sport more. I think it was a big challenge. And also it's a community game. Like you need all 6 players on the court every single time the ball comes over. Whereas in basketball, baseball, a couple other team sports, you can really isolate one person and that one person can take over the game. Where volleyball, you need everybody. In terms of going pro, there's like a gazillion steps between choosing the sport and going pro. But if you condense it, you play high school, maybe then you play on a club team. If you're really lucky, you play on the provincial team after that. So then you're playing 12 months a year in high school, and eventually you get to try out for the junior national team if you're really strong. And then you play your college university ball. The national team looks at you if they think you can help the program. And usually after you've played with the national team a year or two, somebody says, hey, you should get an agent, see if you can go play somewhere in the world and get paid for it. So that's essentially how it went for me.
I also wanted to ask, like, where was your favorite place that you played volleyball? Because you played all over the world.
Yeah, I played everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a big question. I think the food in Italy may put it over the top.
Yeah.
Playing in South Korea was pretty amazing for the games, because we play in these massive arenas. And there's like 5,000 people at every game, like screaming your name. But the food there wasn't the greatest for me personally. And the training was extremely hard. We were averaging like 2 days off a month. We'd train like twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. So the games were super fun there. And then let's say the food in Italy was amazing. And in terms of just like the general lifestyle, maybe when I was playing in France, that was the coolest, because I was right on the Mediterranean, the Riviera, you know. So that was probably the most chill. When we beat Russia, I believe it was in 2012 at the World League final, they had just come off winning the Olympic gold medal, and they had all their all-stars, who are making millions of dollars a year. And this little Canadian team on the rise, we come in and nobody thinks we should even be at this point of this tournament. And our first game in the World League finals is against the Russians. And we beat them in 5. And even the commentator was saying, like, he didn't believe that Canada should be at this tournament, but here they are beating the defending Olympic champions. So that was an incredible moment. I was like just coming back from a crazy injury. I thought I was retired, but somehow I came back. And so that was a wild moment for a bunch of reasons. Not only we beat the Russians, but I had gone through a ton of stuff personally, physically and mentally, and ended up back on the court for Canada. So that was a pretty amazing moment. If we hit rewind, I think the first time you put on a national team jersey, or the first time you see your national team jersey with your name on it, that's a pretty wild experience. But the crazy thing is, those 2 moments are secondary or equal to the first time I made the provincial team when I was 15 years old. Just because I had no idea that I had that in me. I was new to the game. I think growing up where I grew up, growing up Indigenous, I felt like me and my brother were the only Nahiao in the city, which wasn't true, but it just felt that way. And we're constantly competing in pretty much every walk of life. Without even, again, looking back, I can see like, oh yeah, it probably was a little more difficult for me and my brother than the average kid at the public school. There was just nobody like us. and our upbringing was super different. So we're always basically swimming against the current, just in our mentality. So when I made that provincial team at 15, in the meeting after tryouts, when they come in and they tell you if you made it or you didn't make it, I remember I was crazy excited, and I didn't believe the coach, and I started swearing at him. And he's been a university coach for like 30 years now. He loves to tell us the story. He gets more into detail about it, but that was my mind just, I can't believe I made this provincial team. So making the first provincial team, seeing your name on a national team jersey, and then beating the defending Olympic champions, those are probably the coolest moments that jump out at me right now.
So this summer, you were in Toronto covering volleyball at the Olympics. What was your favorite moment from the Paris Olympics?
Oh, man. Well, it's such a cool environment to walk into. It's the biggest thing that CBC does. When I thought about it, I'm like, what? Maybe like elections or something, but no, like the Olympics, it's, 3 weeks long. They rent out all the studios in the building. You're always on call. There could be a game that they want you to call. They could want you to produce a segment. Is incredibly exciting. I think the coolest, well, there's a couple cool moments. I think the first game I called, me and my partner blew the doors off our little booth. We were just so excited. And then people would come to look at our booth, look at us through the windows, like, what is happening? Can we turn that on? Because so many of the sports are very uptight and speaking about, I don't know, fencing or equestrian. And people didn't,
and you're just...
Yeah, people didn't expect it from volleyball, but we were absolutely emoting and making the game fun for people who don't know the sport. And that was probably the second coolest thing. As soon as the game started, bang, 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 started getting messages from people I haven't talked to in 20 years. And then every game, just people reaching out. It was such an overwhelming positive reaction to people saying they enjoyed watching the games. It was fun to watch the volleyball game in a way that people in North America don't expect to have fun watching volleyball. Mm-hmm. And during the Olympics, I also got to produce a segment about not all, but some of the Indigenous commentators that were in Toronto. And we got to talk a little bit about the Olympics and the Olympic perspective through our unique perspective. So that was really fun to do. Nerve-wracking to throw it together and get it out in time. But yeah, ton of fun.
Awesome. So this year we saw record numbers of Indigenous representation at the Olympics, with over 50 Indigenous athletes competing in various sports. Can you tell us more about some Indigenous athletes that represented Team Canada this year?
Yeah, Finn McCarthy. I didn't know my man has a Métis background. So him and his family are starting to discover that. And my understanding is they're quite academic. So they're going deep into the records to find what they can find. And it seems like Finn's not hiding the fact and trying to live in that good way. So that's awesome. I'm super happy that he let it be known, opposed to just being like, oh, that's cool. So he's trying to learn what he can about his situation, which is awesome. Also, shout out to Apollo, the swimmer from Kainai. I didn't know that young fella existed, and man, he crushed it,
Yeah.
Because the only other Indigenous Olympic swimmer I knew was Wanique Hornmiller. Shout out to Wanique, She's probably my favorite Indigenous Olympian, but I won't give it to her because then she's got that over me forever. Yeah. So let me say Jim Thorpe is my favorite Indigenous athlete of all time.
Yeah.
And we could, well, books have been written on him. So we'll just say Jim Thorpe, the GOAT.
How do we foster and grow Indigenous participation in major sporting events like the Olympics moving forward?
So that's a massive question. That's people ask all the time. And what I've learned or what I've experienced is you really have to reverse engineer it, opposed to thinking about getting more Apollos at the Olympics. You have to think about, well, how do you get Apollo in the pool, or even open to the idea of being competitive at a very high level. For example, so when I was still playing, I would go do camps, and eventually I would start bringing my wife. We would go do camps in remote places. Sometimes we'd have to take like 5 planes to get there, and the planes would just get smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And you'd go there with the idea of, okay, we're going to find the next national team. The whole team's up here. And what I found, and then what I explained to Jamie, is there's tons of athletes, tons of potential. The physicality is not the problem. It's the mentality of understanding that you can be one of the best in the world. Which I understand. If you're from such a small place, if you're that far removed from, let's say, Toronto, if you've never seen professional athletes up close, you've never been to a Raptors game or something like that, of course the idea is super foreign. I grew up, like, as a Nahiao dude, growing up in Red Deer, which was a city, the idea was super foreign to me. It took until I was a professional athlete to consider that I could be one of the best in the world. So what I've realized is when we go to these places, it's not about elite sport. Job one is making sure the kids have a fun day and want to come back the next day to try again and be comfortable failing a little bit, because turns out that's super scary to the kids today.
Yeah.
And as an overarching theme, depending where you go, a lot of the places we go, make sure they have a safe day. Maybe there's some wild stuff happening in the community. You want to give them, it's like going to a movie. You want to give them an escape for an hour or two. Get a sweat on, do something positive, something physical, before they have to go back and deal with whatever's happening at home or in the community.
Yeah.
Like we've done camps where little kids, 6, 7 years old, have come in and into the gym. We're playing volleyball with balloons, basically, essentially playing keep it in the air. They get comfortable, and it's so rewarding to see them just outside of whatever's going on in the world. And after the training session, they'll come over. Little kids will say anything. They'll say, "Hey, my uncle died last night. This is really fun. Are we playing again tomorrow?" So getting kids to just have a good day and come back, getting kids to come back the next day. That is the absolute foundation if you want to think about ever getting an athlete to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, there's the geographical issues, and which money, getting kids to bigger and bigger centers as they show potential. But just getting kids to come back the second day, that's the most important thing, I think, to getting more Indigenous athletes to the Olympics.
Yeah. I also think it's very good that we have an organization like the North American Indigenous Games, where they bring all of these Indigenous children and sports together and have that little big tournament with all of the sports going on. So
it's amazing. My brother played in the NAG games, and then he played university basketball. Also, shout out again. I hate to say it. Shout out to Monique again, because to our knowledge, she's the only athlete to ever compete in the NAG games and the Olympic games. So congrats, Monique.
Cheers to her. I did not know that. Were you did you ever play at the NAG Indigenous or at NAG?
The NAG, I never played at them. I did go speak at them. I think just the years, like I would have loved to, but I think just the way the years cycle,
Yeah,
my year didn't work for it.
I know a bunch of like my family went to like Denver, and then I went to Regina. And then my like little cousin competed in like marksmanship in like Halifax or something. So
that's cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wicked.
So jumping into just some sports and reconciliation, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission issued 94 calls to action, and numbers 87, 88, 89, 90, and 91 are all about sports. Why do you think sports play such an important role in reconciliation?
I think there's a bunch of ways to answer. Well, the answers are pretty much right in the TRC report. But from my perspective, I think sports is incredibly healing a lot of the times. Like, for example, I love high-level sport, international sport, because it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. It just matters, can you do the thing? Mm-hmm. Can you help your team? And numbers don't lie, you know? Yeah. Maybe when you're a kid and one of your teammates' parents is the coach, well, they'll probably have a favorite couple kids. Maybe both of their kids are on the team, and maybe they get to do the penalty shots at the end, you know, the shootout or whatever. But once you get to the highest level, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Like, I remember when I joined the national team, my first year on the team, we had a weekend off, and I dyed my hair blue, which I did a couple times. I thought it looked pretty cool. It's no big deal. But, I came into the gym. I'm 18 at this point. I made the team when I was 18, and there's men in their 30s who've been doing this for over a decade. Mm-hmm. They didn't care. They took one look and just went on. Nobody said anything because they've seen everything around the world. So many different walks of life, so many different languages. And then you find a way to communicate regardless of what language you speak. And it's all for the same goal of winning the games and helping the team as much as you can. So all this to say, I think diving into athletics is not only great physically, but it's great mentally. And it is healing because our people haven't had access to sport. I mean, it was taken away, not only our own sports, but access to any of the mainstream sports. Will say it's been like systematically taken with everything else. So the important thing is to get access to these things again.
Yeah, for sure. The first sport-related call to action calls for better public education that tells the national story of Aboriginal athletes in history. Why is this so important, and how do you think Canada is doing?
Well, you hear the term representation matters, which I didn't really. Well, I didn't really have in terms of volleyball, I didn't really have a role model other than some brilliant white dudes, which I don't hold it against them that they're white. They're just white. There weren't any Indigenous athletes to look up to really in the sport. So I didn't have that. That being said, once I was on the national team for 7 years or something, I started getting messages from young athletes and parents and stuff who were saying that I was a role model for their kids and they wanted to try more volleyball now. So I think having just something that you can look up to as a foundation and then say, hey, I want to do that and then better. You know, that's the whole idea with sport. You got to break records. I think that's important. Understanding that it can be done. Someone who looks like you, who's from the same background as you, can do it. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's for sure. You were playing volleyball when I was like super into volleyball. So I was like watching you and like seeing like an Indigenous like representation like on Team Canada and in national sports was just absolutely great.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you should answer the question. I didn't see it.
It's about you.
I was just going to practice every day, trying to, hit balls and stuff.
So recently you have moved in the direction of the arts. Can you tell us what inspired you to get into film and acting after your volleyball career?
Well, the interesting thing is, before I started volleyball, when I was in grade 9, and even before that, I think I really liked drama class. And I took drama my first year of high school, and then I didn't after that because I was doing sport. And if I'm doing practice every day, well, I can't really go to rehearsal. But I remember, I think it was 2014, the World Championship, me and my buddy, Justin Duff, shout out to Justin Duff. We're in our hotel room and we're talking about what we actually like about volleyball, because we're both pretty burnt at this point. Like, you don't get time off being a professional volleyball player. And we settled on the performance aspect of it. Duff really liked performing to the crowd. I pretty much ignored the crowd. Like, the bigger the crowd was, the more like playing in front of 16,000 people at the Maracanazinho in Rio, Brazil. Like, this is the mecca of volleyball. And it gets to you, but then very quickly, as soon as the game starts, you zero in on the 9 by 18 meter rectangle in front of you. But you're still performing. We realized we loved the performance aspect of the game. So when I retired, I was going back to school to do a psychology degree. That's what I thought I was going to end up doing, being a psychologist. I had one empty slot in my schedule. And the academic advisor said, well, we got this drama class. That's kind of all that's open. Everything else is, fully booked. So I took this introduction to drama class with all these 17, 18-year-olds. And I'm there, 32, physically broken. Like, I just retired. Like, my body doesn't work. I'm like pretty depressed. But I loved it. It was so freeing. So then I took another drama class and another drama class and fell in love with it again. And from there, got an agent, a terrible agent, got a better agent, and realized, okay, I love this whole business. It's new to me. It's a challenge. And it's fun. You get to play make-believe. Yeah. I then realized, if I'm going to be in stuff, I'm probably going to have to write it and make it myself, because I'm 6'8". So if you put me beside Tom Cruise doesn't look like the hero anymore, No. So I was getting a lot of security guard, bodyguard. Actually, I have an audition that I have to do after we're done for firemen, these sorts of things. So that's why I started writing and directing my own stuff. And as the years go, it just kind of snowballs. And a movie that we made last winter, that's up for Best Picture, and I'm up for Best Director in the Rosies, it's called. It's the best, or essentially the Alberta Screen Awards. But basically, I'm just stumbling forward in that, kind of like you do in volleyball. You just work hard and hope people recognize it.
Yeah. Well, congrats on the nomination. So thank you, Dallas, and to all of those who tuned in today. You can head over to downiewenjack.ca/DWF Live for a list of our upcoming sessions and to look back at past ones too. Miigwech, and have a great day.
Miigwech.